Well, I mean, to bring it back around to like the politics and the reality, like the of border towns, reservation border towns, and a lot of the book is set in that, like whether it's Gallup or Albuquerque, like the fact that these white funeral home owners will exploit our people, like the death of our people, and they literally interact with like the bodies of those who have passed, and they've turned it into an entire exploitative industry. They make millions of dollars off of that. That is sick and perverse. That's the true nightmare, right? Like border towns are the true nightmare. If you want to talk about the horror story of settler colonialism, it is a nightmare, and the entire border town feels like that. And the amount of violence against Native people and Native women and unsheltered folks is like, it's kind of unbelievable, but we all know it to be true. But anyway, that's also the horror
Yeah,
story in the
it
book
is. It is.
that
And
Rita
that,
has to
and
document and traverse.
right. Yeah, and making this docu series about those border towns at the same time that I'm writing the second book is very hard. And I think it's the reason why book number 2 is so much darker than book number 1. Because we don't have the crutch of blasting back to Rita's childhood and having that moment of innocence and that moment of removing ourselves from that place. Now she's in the present. Even back home, she's in the present. And things have changed, not just for Rita, but for Tohatchi, for Gallup. The way the world works has changed. And it's that's what makes that book so much scarier and so much darker, because it has to be. I mean, I wish I could just rely on flashbacks to Rita's childhood forever, but the fact of the reality is that we're gonna have a different experience growing up in childhood and growing up on the reservation than we do as adults, as women, as Navajo women living in that space. If she moves back to the reservation, like, what is that like for her, and how does that increase her danger as an adult? It's a different place. It's a different time. There are different people living in that space now, and you have to make it darker, and it's hard. It's hard to be in that space. It's hard to make this film at the same time and relive trauma day in and day out, and listen to it in my editing bay, and then go back into the book and write about it. So what I think it is like, again, catharsis, moving the story through not only colonialism, but like the encroachment of the Catholic Church on our spaces, the encroachment of government and regulation, and who these people are that have moved into our spaces, and how do they treat us, and how do they move within our spaces. And so of course it's darker because of that, and Rita's having to experience the world as a woman and as in a different space. She may start out in Albuquerque, but eventually she moves home. And so it's really like talking about that, like how, as a Diné woman living in that space and having the kind of things that she can do, and how is that in the present world? And then, who is this guy that happens to be a serial killer in Gallup? And why does he do what he do? Why does he do what he does? And where did he come from? And how did he build this life? And how did he become evil? And how did this become part of what he does? So yeah, it's just darker. Yes. And I do have a title. It's called Exposure. So we're keeping with that kind of double entendre with the photographic stuff. But it's like, how does that move forward? How does memory, photography, and all of that also play into that too? For a time, she won't take photos anymore. Like, there's a time when she just kind of has to step away from it. So it's hard. It's hard to move on with Rita's story and take it to such a dark place. I'm hoping maybe to bring her back into the light a little bit in the third book, but as book 2 is definitely dark.